Hey, I'm Hunt, and this is Hunt on LSU, your channel for LSU Fighting Tiger football talk. Enjoy the video. We want you to leave a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe right below the video. Enjoy.
And maybe we can see LSU reel in a defensive back that they still feel good enough about that addresses the position. Maybe they can add another. They're still recruiting Terry Bussey, the Texas A&M commit. They're also recruiting other cornerbacks and potentially going to offer more. So it's just a position that still has some fluidity, and they continue to make evaluations and go through the recruiting process with it, but it wasn't too surprising overall.
You mentioned Bussey, and I want to kind of transition to Texas A&M. Obviously, a coaching change going on in College Station. Elijah Robinson taking over as the interim head coach right now. But is there an opportunity for LSU to dig into that class in terms of commitments, or just guys that A&M is recruiting, and maybe do something here in the next 3 weeks?
Yeah, this has been one of the recruiting battles of across the country that is probably the most heated this year. There are guys that have landed in both classes for these schools that they've really been head to head on. And LSU did flip Weston Davis, the 5-star for us at on 3 from Texas A&M, and they were able to get him on board to cap that push that Brad Davis made to flip him, and they were right there for him this summer. There's also been guys like Cade Durham, Highland Singleton, and others that were heavily considering Texas A&M. And on the flip side of that, you had Weston, who committed this summer to A&M, ends up flipping. Draylon Miller was considering LSU and Texas A&M and others, and ends up committing to the Aggies this summer. And LSU hadn't really given up there, and he's now decommitted and kind of back out there on the open market. And same goes for Terry Bussey, Gabriel Relaford, Dominic McKinley, even a little bit of Blake Ivy. These are all prospects that LSU has not necessarily given up on recruiting-wise. And if you look at Gabe Relaford and Dominic McKinley, those are guys on the defensive line and a major position in need in this class. So I think everything's on the table in terms of LSU pushing for those prospects and trying to flip them to finish out this class strong. And we'll kind of have to see what A&M does on their coaching front side of things and see how that impacts those guys. And the same goes for LSU. I mean, who knows what happens on the in particular defensive side, or you never know with guys getting hired away and things like that when you have success on the offensive side. And that'll be something to keep an eye on just as the rest of the year kind of plays out.
Or is it still expected the vast majority of the people that we've mentioned here in this discussion going to sign in the early signing period? I feel like the vast majority of players do that, and that's coming up pretty quickly with the changes at A&M and with what you're talking about at LSU.
Yeah, exactly. Most of them will, and some of them are early enrollees as well. And even guys that are maybe toying with the idea of February signing and kind of unsure, most of the time there's enough time if you can get a coaching hire done in a reasonable amount of time where either they're going to realize, okay, this isn't the place for me, I'm going to go somewhere else, or they're going to say, okay, all right, I feel good about the direction, and I'm going to sign here, or I'm going to do whatever. There's usually enough time for those guys to do that. So I think with most, you're going to see them still sign during the early signing period, and others you'll see them make other decisions.
So we're talking about the 2024 class that could sign on the dotted line here in a couple of weeks. However, there was some news today out of the 2025 class. Harlem Berry, the number 1 running back in the country from Metairie down there in the New Orleans area, has announced that he will announce his commitment on December the 18th. What can you tell us?
Yeah, this is priority number 1, 1A, 1B, really, for Frank Wilson in the class of 2025. He's also recruiting James Simon up in North Louisiana, who's a really, really talented back in his own right. But the number 1 running back in the country is in the New Orleans area at St. Martin's. And so Harlem Berry has now set his commitment date for December, and that's huge. It's right before the early signing period. It would be a really good opportunity to continue to build momentum in a very good 2025 class for LSU, but also just give the potential that Bryce Underwood could have him as a target if he were to commit to LSU on January 6th. But Harlem Berry is just kind of the total package now that he's kind of just grown up. There's a picture of him at LSU camp when he got his offer, and he was, smaller, kind of looked like a scat back, but very, very good. And going into his sophomore season, junior season, he really just added on weight, looks like a grown man now, and he's got elite speed, he's got elite production, and we've seen a lot of the top programs nationally go after him, but it seems like Frank Wilson and LSU have done a really good job, and I would expect good news at this point when he does make that decision.
You mentioned Bryce Underwood. He's been a name we've talked about a ton, set a commitment date for after the first of the year, but the news out of Ann Arbor today was that Michigan took a commitment from four-star quarterback Carter Smith in that class. Do you think that matters at all or tips Michigan's hand at all?
It might tip their hand a little bit, but I mean, when you're talking about the number one player in the country, if he ended up wanting to go to Michigan or any of these other schools that hold commitments from other four-star quarterbacks or three-star quarterbacks, I don't think it necessarily impacts, whether he's a take, whether he's going to go somewhere. But, I mean, LSU's been doing a really good job on Bryce Underwood and building this momentum. So we can look back on it and say, wow, that was, another point in the direction that this, could go LSU's way when we look back on it if he does commit to LSU. But at the same time, LSU's been already positioning themselves in a good spot. And, I mean, if he were to commit today, I'd expect it to be LSU. He hasn't informed any coaches of decisions, but some are maybe starting to read, the writing on the wall. He's still got a top 7. He has told us that he is still pretty set on making that decision on January 6th, which would be big because if LSU can reel him in on that date, then you can have him for the entire spring recruiting. He'd be out on the 7-on-7 circuit, which he's a part of with Sound Mind and Body out of the Michigan, the state of Michigan. He could be out there recruiting for you. He could go to the high-profile camps, all the things that you want your quarterback to do, he would be available for and helping you build your class up. So I think this is a commitment potentially for LSU that would, truly change the landscape of Brian Kelly's tenure. He's obviously won the SEC West this year. They're out, but this is a prospect that I feel like could step in right away and compete immediately for playing time, and if not, just compete. I think he can start. I think he's that good. And you're talking about a generational type of talent. So when you can bring in a guy like that, it'd be huge. And all signs, I would say, seem to point to LSU being the team to beat. And if he were to commit today, you would think it'd be LSU.
Billy, we appreciate some time, man.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Billy Embody, part of the Bengal Tiger Network over there on 3. A lot of encouraging news. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.